The NHS is a huge issue this election, as it is in every election, of course. To hear more about that, let's cross now to Ash, who's sitting down with Dr. Andrew Meyerson.
I'm sitting here with Dr. Andrew Meyerson, who is based in East London, I believe.
Yes.
So, one of Keir Starmer's very top priorities on entering government is to bring down the NHS waiting list. What the junior doctors have said is that industrial action is very much on the table and won't be taken off until there's a pathway towards pay restoration. So that's 35%. How reasonable is that ask in light of the fact that you've got an incoming government where a big part of their mandate is just get the NHS sorted?
So if you look at the magnitude of the problem right now, something that I don't think that Labour is talking about, very few of the parties are talking about the magnitude of the problem. We're talking about a £400 billion hole in NHS funding. We're talking about the waiting list that the Office of National Statistics estimates could be as high as 10 million people, 10 million appointments that need to be served. That's not going to happen. None of that is going to be fixed without resolving the massive staff hemorrhage that we're dealing with. We have, vacancies between the NHS and social care of about 300,000 spots. We have 20,000 nurses, 20,000 doctors that are leaving the NHS every single year, 40,000 nurses that are leaving the NHS every year. And these are highly experienced people at, well into their careers who are, said we can't afford to live here and are being lured abroad by better pay and working conditions. And until we solve that, until we fix this staff hemorrhage, we're not going to solve the waiting list problem. And so that's why I'm optimistic. I know that the public is behind us. The public is behind pay restoration. It needs to happen over a number of years. And it's almost like you can take away everybody's opinion about it. Unless we solve this, then we're not going to see, we're not going to see a strong workforce that will get these waiting lists down and be able to treat patients in the numbers that we absolutely need in order to improve the healthcare of this country.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it. Yeah.
Right? You've got a £12 billion backlog for NHS repairs. So what that means if you're a patient and you're in hospital, that means you're seeing flaking paint, water ingress through the ceilings, broken equipment, shabby interiors. You
could be an intubated patient in an intensive care unit and the ceiling falls on you. That has happened.
I mean, it's absolutely outrageous conditions. And then when you've got some doctors saying, okay, but I want a 35% increase in my pay over a number of years, a patient might say, fix the roof first. So how do you make a case for pay restoration in light of what patients might think of as much more immediate needs that they have in a care setting?
All of it has to be done at once. All of it. I mean, we need to address all of these crises at the same time. The patients that want care in a facility that should be at the level expected in such a wealthy country as the UK is, they need doctors working there. They need a good facility working there. These are major problems that we need to solve. You can't have. It's not like if you fund the doctors, then you can't our broken hospitals. You need to solve all these problems together, and that requires an honest discussion about NHS funding and honest solutions about how we're going to fix the staff crisis, how we're going to fix the capital funding crisis, the beds crisis, and how we're going to fix social care. We need an honest discussion that we're not having right now amongst our politicians.
One of the things which has been traded back and forth, particularly where Labour's been running against independent candidates, is this question of privatising the NHS. Labour wants to privatise the NHS. Of course, there's a massive involvement of the private sector already in the NHS.
Yeah.
For many people in our audience who don't work there, what does that mean on a day-to-day practical basis? How are you coming up against the private sector in your own work?
So in our own work, I mean, every day patients might see that as they might receive they might go to a facility that it has the NHS logo on it, but they're receiving care that has been farmed out to the private sector. They won't see necessarily the problems associated with that because they won't see that a fifth of the NHS budget goes into the private sector and a good portion of that money will then not be reinvested into the services that will help them down the road, that will help train clinicians, that will make sure that the next operation that they need can be done in the NHS. that money gets taken away. And so on the patient-facing side of it, they see the NHS logo, they get their care. And that's what Labour, I think, is banking on, that they can try to deliver care like that. But the problems are associated with, just a little bit down the road, when a huge chunk of the NHS budget that goes to the private sector is not reinvested back into patient care. And so that's where we fail patients. But that's where I think that Labour's trying to get away with it, and why they're pushing this, and why they're trying to push the increased private sector involvement, especially when it comes to building new hospitals and facilities, and solving the capital funding crisis. It looks very much like they're going to attempt PFI 2.0, which is quite scary.
So one of the things that happened in '97 is that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown come in, and they've got this mandate to increase funding for public services somehow without raising the tax burden or making the tax burden heavier, particularly on wealthier people. Yeah. The way they found of squaring that circle was PFI. Now, it's kind of undeniable that for a bit it did work until it very much didn't.
Yeah.
Do you see Labour going down that path now, and within the context of perhaps PFI delivering some immediate gains, some immediate differences to the quality of patient care and NHS capacity, isn't it kind of difficult to make the case of saying, oh no, this is really bad?
Well, no, and it's so alluring. You can imagine the incoming government saying, "Oh, well, we need to solve this. There's that demand that we need to improve. We need to improve our facilities. We can't have the ceiling falling on intubated patients in intensive care. That's just absolutely unacceptable. We can't have an entire wing of a hospital closed because of flooding." And when you talk about NHS productivity, that has a huge impact on it. And so I can imagine the people coming into government now thinking, okay, well, we need to solve this. There's massive amount of money that can be invested from BlackRock, from other places, that desperately want to get a foothold into the NHS. And so it looks very much like they're going to do it. The problems, and this is the problems with, I guess, politics in general, and what we've seen for the last 14 years is this short-termism, this desire to just win the next election, just win the next poll, just to win the next headline, without looking at the long-term consequences of these policies. PFI added, I think we're paying something like £80 billion extra on top of what we normally would.
So it's false economy, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And in the end, it hurts patients and it hurts the taxpayer, because you have these facilities that are built, and then there's contracts for decades about who's going to receive these contracts, and it's gifting money to the private sector so unnecessarily. And we can, like we've done before, like when this country needs to be rebuilt, we've borrowed to invest. And that's the way to do it. That is the best long-term for NHS patients and for the taxpayer as well.
I want to move away just a little bit from, PFI and NHS funding. Keir Starmer, during this election campaign, said that he wouldn't want to see trans women being treated on single-sex wards, and instead they can be treated in side rooms. Now, from your perspective as someone who is working in the NHS day in, day out, you see what kind of capacity there is. Is that even a feasible suggestion on his part?
Anytime this question comes up, I almost just don't even want to answer it. No serious person with any knowledge of any of the problems, any of the multiple massive crises that face the NHS, nobody will talk about trans patients. Nobody will. This is a culture war talking point that and when we saw, it was the Steve Barclay giving a speech at the Conservative Party conference, and his big issue was trans patients, as if that is a massive crisis that we all need. Look, we have, if politicians want to seriously address this problem, we need to talk about NHS funding, staff beds, and social care. Those are the main issues, and I don't want to hear another word about trans patients, except if you're going to improve their care, except if you're going to take them out of the news, except, it's just disgusting to me that they have taken this issue and attacked this group of people, and attacked this group of clinicians as well, who are just trying to receive health care. And politicizing their existence is just absolutely disgusting. And so Labour shouldn't be doing anything except listening to experts about how to solve this problem, how to solve all of the problems existing within the NHS. But anytime I hear this, and I'm sorry it just gets me so angry, because it's nowhere near anywhere near any of the problems that we need to be talking about.
Andrew Meyerson, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Back over to the studio.
We